Hey everyone, welcome to the AI Executive Podcast. This is your go-to live broadcast and podcast for real-time AI insights, industry trends, and expert discussions, hearing it directly from the AI industry experts. As I promised, without the hype, but with practical steps that you can take in your business. I'm your host, Albert Ramos, and I'm joined today by Ryan Eglon. Man, he's cool. He's a senior software engineer with deep expertise in AI-driven automation and infrastructure. Ryan has worked extensively in building high-performance applications and integrating AI in a business operations. My favorite, and I can't wait to chat about it. His experience includes AI automation and vertical agents. We're going to touch on that today. LangChain and AI frameworks, prompt engineering. I know a lot of our audiences can't wait for this. Prompt engineering and AI optimization, scalable AI optimization and infrastructure. And then he's building some really cool AI applications. So today, the intent about this podcast and what we'll dive into is vertical agents and how they're transforming the industries, not a buzzword, actual applications and agents being used today. So Ryan will be walking us through that. The power of LangGraph in AI development. And finally, as I mentioned, best practices for the audience out there that is leaning into AI and wanting to get better on prompt engineering. So Ryan will be sharing some best practices to better improve your AI experience. Ryan, let's jump in. Thank you so much for joining us. And before I get into the questions, you have some history with White Glove AI, and I did not want to pass that up. I'd love for you to walk us through your history with White Glove AI and our CEO and founder, Nick James. So Mike, over to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is a really cool opportunity to get here and talk with you guys live on stream. Yeah, me and Nick, man, we go pretty far back nowadays. So I met Nick at the Texas Blockchain Council in Dallas at a meetup. This is before, I think, a lot of things, definitely before AI hype. I think both of us were at that point focused on the crypto industry. I was working for a company that was was more in the mining related space. And at that point, I think Nick was starting up the Web3 community, the Web3 Texas community. And I bumped into him at the Texas blockchain, and we started talking. He told us about his meetup, and I said, "Oh, I think this was relatively when I was new to Dallas, so I was trying to get into the crypto industry at that point, or at least trying to meet people in the local industry." And told me about his meetup, and I said, "Hey, maybe I should go check out that one." Ended up getting really integrated into his meetup, and I really enjoyed the community there. And things kind of progressed from there. A big inspiration. I started my own meetup at one point, and actually, I've told Nick this in the past, that my meetup was his meetup from Web3 Texas was a big inspiration for Plano prompt engineers, and how that ended up transpiring was, I believe all of us kind of caught the hype bug when ChatGPT got released. And at that point in time, I think I was in North Carolina at a family's house. And it was to me that there was an opportunity to jump on, and a little bit different from the crypto industry. Crypto industries at that time, it was always trying to create solutions in search of a problem. And, with the AI being the way it is, it's going to proliferate pretty much into every industry. And so I saw the ability to get more familiar with the hammer and then just go and search for nails.
It's amazing. Well, such a pleasure meeting you the other day at our local Dallas meetup. It was a big reason after we chatted why I wanted to have you on the show to kick us off. We had a great conversation. We won't get into it today around just reality, virtual reality, meta, and some other paths that we're having some fun chatting about. But what I'd love to do, and by the way, let me say this. Thank you for all the work that you've done specific to White Glove AI. I know there's a special part about the logo You want to touch on that quickly before we get into some of the questions that I had for you and just having a conversation today. But what's the logo all about? And I know you were a big part of this. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, and actually, I appreciate you asking that. That's actually I was going to try to dive into. So, as I started at the meetup, I started talking more and more with Nick just about how my excitement for this technology, and I believe both of our shared excitements for the nails that we could find. And it started with myself, another friend of ours, Ben Pieri, and we thought, all right, let's start trying to put our organic CPUs together and start figuring out maybe where the best use cases should be. And I think as the industry evolved, as fast as it's gone, it's been hard to keep up. That's been the full-time job as it is. So when kind of as I was starting up my meetup, I was starting to kind of talk more and more with Nick, and I believe our excitement around the consulting aspect, and that there's just so many use cases that starting with the product at that point in time did not seem like the best way to go. I believe that we were all in agreement at that point that trying to focus on delivering value for customers, whether they be small businesses or enterprise customers, was going to be, I believe, our shared route in order to, for one, driving value for the end user, and two, for us to also ideate on what products we could build, and then try to take those learnings from consulting aspects, and then see what we can do to productize those use cases.
I love it. Well, hey, look, thank you so much for what you've built thus far with White Glove. And I know you're still on this journey, and we're obviously, there's a lot of buzz out there, right? And we're super excited to go and educate the public and the marketplace and offer solutions for any pain points they have. And we wear you on the shirt. I'll say it that way. We wear you on the shirt every day, and we're proud to do it. And I love that you're on the show today. And thank you for the history and the legacy that you're leaving here. And there's still more work to do. As you said, there's a full-time day job as this stuff moves very fast. And I'd love to switch gears, right? I've taken a look at your LinkedIn and your posts, and we've gotten a chance to talk, right? I remember being on a recent webinar, actually, an Ali K. Miller, who's very mainstream, so lovable, does it really well, has really brought AI to what I would call the frontline team member, right, to the field. And has really empowered us to learn more and to lean in. And I love that about Ali K. Miller. But what I learned from your posts and what you're doing and how you're educating specifically in vertical agents, right? I think I'd love to touch on that. What is that? And how do you foresee agents changing industries? Is there any particular industries that you think will go first and this will really get integrated into?
Yeah, and I might step on my own toes here, but honestly, I think it's coming for software engineers pretty quickly. And it's the major jump is more or less I've felt been in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's been with the releases of these updated reasoning models and seeing what the competition is in the space, and that's heating up. And there was the DeepSeek release. That was a mic drop. And then also the follow-up of the O3 Mini has also been a very eye-opening kind of realization to what the capabilities of what these models are. And at the moment, I could see definitely software engineering, customer service aspects. I don't really see a place that it can't touch until we start getting inundated with robotics.
For sure. And something that I've noticed about you, Ryan, that you do publicly and on your social media platforms is you actually show, right? And this is something that at White Glove and the AI Executive that we really preach is no hype. Let's get through the noise and let's provide educational and applicable things that people could go do within their businesses or in their personal life. What I love about what you've shared is, hey, let's pull it up, let's test this, and let's show. So you brought up DeepSeek and you brought up O3. And we saw what X and Elon just delivered a couple nights ago. They're working through the bugs. What are your thoughts? Walk me through some of your favorites and some that maybe not necessarily are that you throw away, but they have some work to do. What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. it's starting to get to where I believe I haven't played with the new Grok model. I'm actually probably tonight or tomorrow, I might start implementing it into my current projects just so that we can start to test. I know that it's on Chatbot Arena. I like to do my evaluations based on equipping it with a set of tools that I find interesting and seeing what it's capable of from the tools perspective. And admittedly, I haven't used the Chatbot Arena, but from what I've heard, it's more like people testing different prompts against various models and then choosing the model blindly. And from what I've heard, last week or so, Grok has been rising in those charts. So I have not had the chance to test it yet, but I am very excited to see what its reasoning capabilities are. And it's interesting from the perspective of, do we even need the previous model versions? Like, are we going to just kind of stop using the GPT versions, and are we just going to start going? Are the default use cases all going to be? Are all going to revolve around the reasoning models? That's kind of what I'm watching in the short term. It seems to be the case that these reasoning models are really good at thinking through the whole process and then executing. And before, with the other models, we started to get these times where the model would execute instead of thinking first. And something that's interesting that I've seen recently, and this just caught me by surprise testing with a friend the other day, showing him my app. We were trying to basically he was running a malicious query through the app, and it's on a container, so it's isolated, but I was like, yeah, go ahead and run it. Like, let's see what happens. And the funny thing is we were doing this on O3, and what I was suspecting was the model to just go ahead and start executing the tool, but it would not. It specifically, we asked it why would it not do it? And it didn't actually tell us that, hey, your query is malicious. I don't know if it's internally thinking about, maybe I shouldn't reveal that, hey, this person is trying to do something malicious. But it specifically prevented the tool execution, where it said, I'm not doing that, and didn't even provide a response. And so that was a very interesting development that I think is emergent behavior prior to the previous model versions.
Man, that's some great stuff. And I love, see, you're in it, right? You're showing. I really appreciate that as someone that comes from an operator background, finance background. I love the tangible, right? And again, you're showing it live or out on your social media platforms. You said something that really caught my attention, right? So you like to test or use things that fit within your ecosystem as tools, right? Your set of tools. And I feel like there's a lot of business leaders out there, as they're trying to lean in, there's still a question on, well, how do I do this with my existing workflow, my existing tech stack? And it sounds like you have a bit of a system there, or maybe even a recommendation. And do you mind sharing that suggestion or advice as business leaders professionally out there, or maybe even personally, as they're looking to lean into AI and use and test? Walk us through what you just said around, well, I want it to fit within the tools that I enjoy using. I love that word too, that I enjoy using. What can you unravel that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And that's one of the biggest pieces that I've been focusing on, is just what are the possibilities with various types of tools, whether it be a more granular based tool that gives it more deterministic inputs and outputs, or is it a more broad based tool, like equipping it with its own virtual machine, and then whatever you put on the virtual machine or whatever it installs on that virtual machine is the bounds within its execution environment. So the one that I've been really utilizing, and this is kind of going into like, we throw in Devin and stuff like that and trying to reverse engineer what they're doing. But from my perspective, when you take an agent like normal ChatGPT, and then you bolt on a tool like an Ubuntu 24 container that may not be a full virtualized operating system,
right.
But it's a isolated piece that an AI can perform bash commands into. Well, its action space is just so vast, and it's really, you're only limited based on what you can actually put within that execution environment for that agent to do. So you could technically you could have this other container wherever it may be running, be equipped with its own GPUs, and it could be doing fluid dynamics calculations and then reporting back to you over your chatbot or over Slack, just like a normal employee. That, from me, my perspective, is one of the most exciting pieces. And that goes into the newer stuff that we've been seeing from the new model provider, or the operator model, like from OpenAI, that can do full computer use. I haven't played with those yet. And but those are where I see it, where things going. And so I'm not focused there. I'm focused on all of the tools that don't take up that. So it's like equipping an agent with a browser use so that I can see it, it could utilize my applications to some extent, equipping the agent with a virtualized operating system and its own SSH key so that it could technically have its own Git credentials and create issues, or write its own code and submit that code for me to review.
I get fired up because there's people like you, and we have the team at White Glove that are showing me how you can use these agents, to your point, in something as we use it every day, your browsing tools, right? And to see it work and be prompted and pulling things for you, and what used to take me, even little minutes, hours, can be done in seconds without me having to touch my keyboard or do anything. And it's outstanding. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm sure you've seen it, and actually I know you were a big part of some of the feedback we received at this time today. At the time of recording, we actually launched our AI AMF, the AI Adoption Management Framework, that we're releasing to small, medium-sized, and the enterprise, large organizations, because that's been the missing link for a lot of our business leaders in the audience, just not knowing what to do or how to do it, or having a framework. And one of the pillars is integration, strategic integration. And I know you're a big proponent of this, again, through application testing, iteration. What do you feel like are some of the biggest challenges from your experience or observation that organizations at this point are facing when it comes to integrating within their businesses?
I think that we're equally kind of covering a lot of ground in both of these respects. Is that White Glove's covering it from a framework and a compliance and a strategic enterprise level, and providing that framework is, I believe, extremely valuable, because at the moment I feel that a lot of these C-suite executives they feel like they have their hands cuffed because they're not technical enough to know where it fits inside of their organization. And so it does come down to a lot of the technical expertise to provide those suggestions. I've focused a majority of my time in the open source world, and not more or less working. I've always felt that managed is great, but I want to have the ability to not always have a managed service. So a lot of my exploration has been done in these open source frameworks and open source services. Like, I guess when I'm talking about services, like other Docker containers that have to be bolted on to your existing services.
Right.
Something like, here's my key point. I usually build applications with a NoSQL because I just do not want to go manage SQL database evolutions and migrations and stuff like that. But something that has pushed me towards more SQL-oriented infrastructure are something like Postgres. PG Vector has been open sourced on top of its existing Postgres database. So Supabase is their infrastructure is on top of Postgres. So I could actually most of my applications are hosted on Supabase, but I'm using the PG Vector interface. So technically, if I didn't want to be managed anymore, I just extract the data and I just go put it somewhere else and on my own infrastructure. So in my point of view, the ability to move wherever is, it provides me some security in knowing that I don't have to be locked into some vendor. Right. And as well as, and this kind of goes into the buy versus build argument, is that, when you start doing that, though, you don't move as fast, but you learn a lot along the way. And so that is where
such a good point.
That's where a lot of my focus is. And that's where I don't think that that's actually the best way to go in a lot of situations. I actually think that because of the way that the ubiquitous nature of this technology, it actually is at every single level. It's just a matter of identifying it at every single level and then moving as fast as possible to validate your assumptions.
You remind me of a good point, right? This isn't a one size fits all. It really is dependent on the organization, the data that they have. And, you bring up open and I'll throw it in versus close. And I'm going to bring up some controversial topics here in a little bit. And you mentioned a name earlier. We actually had a recent roundtable about DeepSeek, and I'd love to circle back on that. But you make such a good point that it's not a one size fits all. This is a strategic decision that leaders need to make, right? And it's not just the investment of $1, but it's how we integrate into your existing tech stack or workflows, as we were chatting about, but then also understanding the different levels of artificial intelligence, agentic workflows, and agents, right? There's a lot going on there. And I get it why so many people are so confused, right? And as you're walking through your experience and what you use, I know the technical audience members out there, they're salivating, man. They're going to be reaching out to you. I'm like, what? You use this, you use that. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes. But for those that don't have that technical background, I want them to hear what you're saying too. Is this is a strategic decision. This can't be an overnight thing or go with what the shiny object is. You got to really think about your existing structure, your people, right? Your existing tech stack, your workflows, and finding those pain points on where to integrate it in and doing it the right way so that it's smooth, because this could blow up in your face. There's just so much going on. So I love that you said that. And let me touch on the more controversial. I call it controversial because of what you see out there in mainstream. DeepSeek, right? And this open source versus closed, right? You see the Eglon versus Altman beef, right? And then Elon comes out with his smartest AI in the world, but it's closed as of now, for now, right? What are your thoughts on that? DeepSeek fan, yay, nay, right? And then walk me through this open versus closed debate that's out there.
I don't know how DeepSeek makes me feel, because it's gasoline. It's when that got released, everybody else is slapping theirs down on the table saying that mine's better, and that's the world we're in now. So I don't know how it makes me feel, but in the sense of where it's going, and it really, you have to make sure. You have to understand there's a certain amount of technical expertise that has to be understood at every level. Mm-hmm. From the perspective of DeepSeek, and you get into like politicians' understanding of what technology is, like chat. They release their own chat app. That information will get sent to their servers in China.
Right.
And so the argument has been now that, okay, technical people understand that there's tons of vulnerabilities and security risks with putting data, especially enterprise data, into their system. And the argument has been transitioning it to here's these open source models that are coming out that are stacking up against our US enterprise companies. And they are, what I guess I don't know, and I don't have the expertise to really talk more on this subject, is there the ability for these models to bake in some type of backdoor into existing infrastructure? Because from how these models are, yes, they essentially release the open weights, they release it into the community, and then the community starts utilizing it. And in those instances, you shouldn't be sending any data anywhere. And from what I've heard on the internet, more or less, most people have validated those, but you really can never tell unless you look under the hood yourself. And so that's where we're at now, is that now these politicians have to figure out legislation around that. And now we may end up getting to where we have regulatory capture happening everywhere because we have competitive models that are just being released. And we also have to talk about what are the implications of why they did that. Because, from my perspective of watching all of those events was, US says that we're going to get a ton of investment around AI and we're going to put it, in Texas. Well, the Chinese, they're just going to release their model in there, and hey, that maybe makes the waters muddier for where the investment monies go. Who knows?
Right. That's exactly what's going on. I'm with you all the way, right? And it's so funny. You're right. Lift up the hood. We have a team member in White Glove, Dr. Donnie Went, for the audience. Please go check him out. Right. It's no longer about trust but verify. It's like verify and then see if you can trust type of thing. Like lift up the hood. It doesn't mean you need to be a builder or developer or anything like that, but offer some discernment. Right. Be skeptical. It's okay to have some healthy skepticism. Right. But it amazed me. And look, DeepSeek has had a pretty significant history, right? It's not an overnight success. There's some very talented people there, and they made a huge impact to the stock market, NVIDIA, and some others, and it woke some people up, right? It's like, hey, OpenAI, you're not gonna run the show like this. Like we're gonna, and it's good for, I think, the end user in the sense of driving costs down, right? Having different options. But to your point, right? When you lift up the hood, what's going on behind the scenes as far as backdoor data leakage? Where is the data going? Where is it being stored? These are some questions that everyone should be asking, including enterprise. And while I do think that it was exciting for the industry and where we're going and how the intelligence is evolving and getting better, it may have, as we see more news about it and as we unravel it a bit, it may have created a bit of a stall on the adoption, in my opinion, because of, well, there's some noise around sensitivity of data and ethics, et cetera. So I'm interested to see where that's all going. It's fun to watch, but I'm like you. I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about it. That was such a good answer, because I think that's where everyone's at. Like, well, I don't really know, actually. So, all right. So switching gears. You mentioned prompt engineering, or we were chatting about this earlier, and how it really does play a crucial role to do it correctly. And you're one that is just constantly playing, iterating, testing, prompting. So for the audience, I know there was a lot of DMs before the show and asking, ask about prompt engineering. What are the best practices? And I know everyone has their specific framework, but what have you found in order to get reliable and value output? What is your recommendations on how we prompt this intelligence?
That is a great question, because as I'm currently feeling, it changes every day. Thanks
for keeping it real. Thanks for keeping it. This is why we do it live. No edits. I want to keep it real. Like, this is what's going on behind the scenes, folks. Is like, we're testing this stuff. Like, it's on the fly. Things are changing. And Ryan, this is why I love you, man. Like, you just keep it real. Yeah, walk us through. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's that I literally saw a tweet, and I think from Greg Brockman in the last couple of days. It's either today or yesterday, but as these reasoning models, so it used to be with the GPTs, you kind of had to bake in its persona. You are an expert XYZ at this, and this is what we're doing, and these are the things that I need you to remember. That used to be your system prompt. But from the latest, and I would recommend anybody that's looking for prompt engineering assistance, especially as the new reasoning models have come out, the prompt itself has changed a bit from what I understand. And I actually was about to go look it up, but I don't have it off the top of my head, and so I need to get better at remembering this. But as I've understood this a bit better, it seems that providing it, not the saying that it's a persona expert anymore, but also just providing it more background context about what you're doing seems to be kind of the direction that it goes. Because here's actually where we're starting to go, is we're starting to get where these agents have to start understanding what the sub goals are based on, they get a primary goal. And this is actually the analogy I heard it more recently, is that if you want to go to Europe, you first got to get to the airport. And so that's what's going to start coming up, is these models are going to get better at the sub goals underneath, and that you're going to have to tell them less to some extent. But that's kind of why I see the shift going from telling it the persona-based prompts and shifting into more of a, here's the context of what we're actually trying to achieve.
So everyone out there with your prompt library templates, jump in. They're probably outdated. We need to go, and they're going to be outdated tonight as well and tomorrow. But you're right. So, I mean, I'm hearing the same things. I'm reading the same things. Something that I've been used to, and actually got this from a colleague of mine and co-host of our AI Executive Morning Buzz, Jason Hess. And for those out there, go reach out to him on LinkedIn. He's great about educating specifically around prompt engineering. It's in the acronym PICO, right? The first part of that, and you mentioned this, is persona. And I've been always in the habit, and when I teach, like, look, you got to tell it what it is, right? And I love playing in the GPT space and getting real narrow. I call it inch wide, mile deep for, when I outfit enterprises and small businesses with GPTs. But persona is key. But like you're saying, the way this is all evolving, it looks like and sounds like, based on what we're reading, that you might not need to do that anymore, right? And we're so used to the I, which is information. What you hit home on, though, is what may be more important is tell it what, or show it what, or speak to it and tell it what great looks like, right? What do you let it know some of the guardrails, or what good and great looks like, so it has an idea of what type of output, at least in the formatting or in the value of it, what you're really looking to get out of it. And then finally, optimization, which I'll come back to that. What were your thoughts on the context piece?
Well, in thinking of it in different modalities, so text, yeah, that's one way, but you got to think that you also are restricted by your ability to articulate. And so,
I love this. We got to chat about this.
You also need to think about how you can create other pieces of information for the model to create a bigger contextual picture. So I've more recently been utilizing so basically all these models are doing is they're just outputting markdown, and that's a standardized way. If you've ever used something called a WYSIWYG editor, you're basically just applying markdown with buttons and clicking on those buttons, but you can actually just write it out yourself and then render it. But where I'm going with that is there's a mermaid diagrams. It's something that we can utilize in building diagrams in software engineering, and it could be utilized in so many other ways. And I've actually been utilizing this format in order to build connections for the AI to understand certain nuances between relationships of what I'm actually discussing with it. So yeah, I'll end up putting in my text-based kind of contextual piece, but I'll also ask ChatGPT to create a mermaid representational diagram and also supply that. And then any visual examples I can as well. I've also noticed that, at least from the web design side, that providing examples enhance its ability to create a great output. And that's a little bit harder to tell when you don't have a web design as your use case. But thinking of these like different representations and building those relationships, I think mermaid diagrams, if you're doing any type of that mind mapping, I would highly recommend asking it to output something in a mermaid diagram.
I love that. I knew you were sitting on a gold mine, right? You got the cool beanie, you got the cool glasses. I could never rock it. I could never pull it off. You're coming in. I'm like, this guy is so cool. And you're sitting on a ton of stuff that I need to get my eyes and hands on. So we could chat about that later, right? That was really cool. You mentioned something, and again, we have different levels of people that are using AI in specific ways, or leaning in. They're at the basic route, just starting or thinking about starting. And then you got those that are far into the technical side of things. And so I love that you're touching on a lot of things. I want to go towards those that are leaning in on the just the usage, right? Not the builders. You said articulation, your ability to articulate. And I've been going around to different businesses, on different podcasts, at different networking events, because there is this controversial topic, which I'd love to chat with you about, around, okay, is it augmenting or replacing? And what I'm saying out there is, well, both. And when I lift up the hood, I'm looking for ways, of course, from a place of empathy and team member experience. How do we reposition people with this new technology, augment their work, and make them more productive, right? Make them happier, allow them to utilize their skills better, right? Now, there's also tasks and roles that just won't require human intervention anymore, right? Specific to, when you introduce agents, And even just AI intelligence or agentic workflows, in a lot of ways, things are replaced too. And people need to understand it's not what you see in mainstream media. It's not doom and gloom, but it's also not rainbows and butterflies where, yeah, you'll be fine. You're just going to be augmented. Like, what? No, we don't need that. We don't need that human role anymore. This technology can replace that. That being said, someone's ability to then supervise, right, and understand what's going on here, delegating to agents or, managing, supervising an agentic workflow, I think is important. And your ability to articulate, to communicate with this digital species is going to be a superpower, right? And so I want to unravel that piece with you, because you now you got my brain firing up, right? And it's communication skills, y'all. We have to be able to communicate with this intelligence. And if you communicate appropriately with some of the framework and the gold mine you're sitting on, you're going to get some great output and be able to use this really well. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's interesting from the perspective of a software engineer, because we spend our entire career trying to figure out how to communicate with the computer. Now the computer can communicate with us. Right. And that is going to change everything of our relationships with computers. And that's kind of the ride that we're going to be on, to just see how it unravels. I totally agree on the side of replacement, and I see it as people that are going to be complacent are always going to be complacent, and they're always going to be caught off guard by these things. And the people right. that are actively trying to understand where they're going to fit are the people that are, you're going to achieve scale within yourself as opposed to being replaced.
You're going to achieve scale, not just as an organization, but for those of you leaders out there, business owners, you're going to achieve scale professionally, by using these tools, learning and using and leaning in with these tools. I'm stealing that, Ryan. That's amazing. I love that. I love it. All right, let's talk about security, right? That's a heavy topic. And there's a lot of noise out there around what data you should be giving these models and these tools. And I think that is typically, at least from my observation, and I'd love to tap into yours, where a lot of this tension, agitation, and even pause, almost a sense of like, we're gonna wait to see the first movers kind of figure it all out. Still, I guess we're still there, right? From an adoption gap, we're gonna let the first movers figure it out, let them get through the messiness, and then we'll figure out which are the tools that survive and that are secure. From a data security and governance, what are your recommendations, and what have you seen out there? What are the do's and don'ts, or maybe the watch out fors?
Yeah, here's what's hard is that it does take a level of experimentation. What I mean by that is when you start getting down under the hood, you start to realize where certain off-ramps are, meaning the AI agent is your API, and you either have a local LLM or you're hitting another larger model provider's API to take some data and use it as an input. And so you have to more or less, when you start using managed systems, it's about validating those systems for what their intention is. If you're going for an enterprise system, you want to make sure that if you're going to use a managed enterprise system, you want to make sure that there are existing customers at a certain level of scale that have signed up, and also just doing your due diligence on the platform that you're about to utilize, and that what data, and then I think this is actually where you guys come in, is the framework in which what data and how the executives understand what data can be utilized from their existing data warehouse and passing it into the model. And so I guess where I was going on the experimentation side is when you start getting to having the agent execute on your behalf, you have to start really thinking about how your security is architected, because this is not a traditional system in the sense of you log into a login page, you get an authentication token, and then you get in. It is that the model has a certain level of agency on your behalf. And so you have to, that is kind of where I'm meaning on the experimentation, is that once you start to get into, okay, well, we need to have this token be utilized. Well, we don't want to pass it into the model because then the model has our token somewhere on some server. And so you have to get really, you can be lazy and you can pass it into the system message. And then all of a sudden you have all this data that goes in through a system message that could be utilized downstream and actually achieve your goal. But then you're also passing, you might be passing, you know, a username or somebody's email or something through the system when it really shouldn't be. And so it's, yeah, like there's a certain aspect of understanding what you're going to architect so that you can make sure the security around it is solid. And then there's the kind of the experimentation, just making sure that you're used. It just gets, it can be very deep. That's where my perspective is, that you want to make sure that at least the systems that you're utilizing, that you understand exactly what you're signing up for.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Again, it comes back to just offering some discernment, right? There is some testing and experimentation and iteration going on, and you just want to be mindful of, you know, sensitive data going through some of these models, right? It's just making sure you're aware, and this is why I love doing these things, because we're looking to educate the public on. There's a lot of great. There's also a lot of things that could go wrong if you're not minding it, and I love that. It's, you know, after our first layer of the AIM framework of evaluate, we go into the governance layer of it all, right? And it has to be foundational. I see a lot of organizations speed right through to, let's just go integrate. And it's like, wait a second, pump the brakes. There's a lot going on here that you potentially don't understand that can become, you know, an LP. And I come from the finance world, loss prevention or risk management or legal situation. You gotta think those through. We were talking about it earlier this morning. What's great about the framework and really emphasizing governance is you bring all the departments together, right? No longer are you going to be siloed. We need to come together to make sure that this is done correctly. I have another question for you, and this is, I'm going to get real basic, right? And apologies in advance, because I know this is going to get real basic for you, because you're very advanced. As I've found watching you for a little while now, meeting you and now chatting. But can you walk us through the audience? And this is where the technical guys are, all right, we got our stuff. We might speed through with a 1.2, 1.5 speed. This is going to be for the audience that is still like, hey, Ryan, educate me on what's the difference between everything that you're saying. Walk us through, like, a leader that is just getting on. Let's just use ChatGPT as an example, right? There's different models, but ChatGPT, me using it, then me using a GPT, then agentic workflow and agent. I think we need to differentiate what those things are, so that people understand, well, what am I using now? What should I be using? And what should I expect to be using or supervising or managing or delegating to in the future? Can you walk us through kind of, you know, in simple verbiage of what's the difference between those things?
Let me walk through my experience of how things have evolved for me.
Excellent.
So
yes,
ChatGPT comes out. We learn about that we can now have the ability to have non-deterministic outputs from infrastructure. Interesting. Seems minuscule now, but it was a big paradigm back then when ChatGPT came out, that now
huge shock. Yeah,
we can now have undeterministic API. What does that mean? And that was a lot of people trying to figure out what that means. And so I was very lucky to kind of catch a link from probably LangChain at one point, and that I started to use LangChain in the open source community to, base my ground understanding and how these things work. And how it started for me, that there's normal ChatGPT, they release the APIs, and the open source community is also going at this. And it started for me was normal chat. I need to build a social media post. I don't need a tool. I don't need to have some type of vector database for that. It started there. Then it went into RAG, or, for the audience, retrieval augmented generation. And what that means is, instead of you just talking back and forth with the model is equipped with its own memory source. It's a database, but it's a relevancy database. It's not that you give it an ID and it pulls you back out one record. It's here's what I'm looking for, and it tries to gauge the highest relevancy of documents that it needs to go perform in order to answer your question. And then it looks at them and then it provides you an answer. And then it went from that to agents, and agents could really be all of the above for that. Is that once RAG itself was a subset of, agent capabilities before, but now it is one of the more utilized tools in an agent workflow, because we have context windows. You can't just take every bit of information you can and just shove it into the system message, because you get a truncated system message and then it forgets something that, it just should have. So what we utilize is these vector database systems to collect the highest relevancy of documents in our data, and then return that, have the model look at those results, and then provide an answer based on that results. And so that is now a piece that fits into an agent workflow, because let's say if you're talking about the AI software engineer, well, every time I push a deployment, I need my AI software engineers to have the latest representation of what the code is. How do you do that? You more or less, every time a deployment goes out, you scrape your entire code base, put it in a vector database, and then now you tell your agents, hey, we just did a deployment. You have the most updated code. That means that you have the latest changes. Let's affect our changes from here. So in that sense, that is kind of the way that you achieve a memory to some extent with AI. And then all of the tools can be bolted on. Vector databasing and RAG should be a piece that fits in. You don't always need it, but when it comes to high level processes that we're going to need agents to kind of take off of our hands and start implementing themselves, I see that being a crucial piece of an existing vertical AI infrastructure going forward. Until they, there is the model. I haven't played with it much myself, but I know that Google has like the 10 million context window, and those are also interesting. So it's like, I don't know if that's going to be the norm in the future. That's going to probably be something to watch. At the moment, it seems that the vector databasing is not going away. And so, if you want to kind of get a good base of what is a bit capable of, you need to kind of understand what the capabilities of RAG are, and then start to apply agents with that. Because if you don't have this, you kind of don't understand how to get an agent from, version 1 to version 10.
I'm so glad you said that, right? It comes back to, you can't just cookie cutter, plug it in and think we got the magic pill, we have the competitive edge, right? You have to think about a lot of things, right? The evaluate, the governance, etc., before you even decide you want to integrate, right? You have to understand your existing workflows, your structure, your people, right? And then you got to understand, well, what's the best solution, right? And kind of going back to, well, ChatGPT in this example, or maybe it's Microsoft Copilot in that ecosystem, or some others, right? And I might get some hate DMs like, hey, you didn't mention Claude or some others. Like, I like them all. We were testing them all as this is being, as this is live and we're dishing out the recording, right? We test a ton, including DeepSick. Not a favorite. All right, I'll throw it out there. Not a favorite, but I know some of our team members or colleagues like it, and we really press on the open source too. We really enjoy that. So we go on OpenAI, right? You prompt it, human intervention, it spits it out, beautiful, right? GPT, as I mentioned, right, is that inch wide, mile deep, has some guardrails, right? If I wanted just to focus on this niche, it can do that. And I could upload, and you were mentioning this, upload into the knowledge base, configure it with specific instructions, upload maybe some documentation, some SOPs or some what have you that you have, and hopefully you have it as an enterprise or a business, that you can upload it and it knows just that. Then there's agentic workflows where you have a mixture of the AI and automation. And then these agents, which as you're building, and this is what people need to understand, we're getting further and further away from human intervention, maybe human supervision, but human intervention is now getting thrown out the window. These digital beings, maybe beings is the wrong word, digital species. Actually, I got that from Mustafa Soliman from Microsoft. He said that. I'm like, I'm stealing that. Digital species.
I go digital sentience. Just go
there you go.
Matrix from it.
Okay. And you just brought up a movie, and I was wondering as you were explaining, oh man, that reminds me of a movie. And I gotta bring this up. And I know we're running out of time and you're super busy, but walk me through everything that you've experienced over the years and now where you see things as they are and where you think things are going, especially with agents and humanoids. Like we can go deep there too. VR, which we talked about this at the meetup. It's flying under the radar. Something big is happening in these immersive virtual reality spaces. Again, different. I'm gonna have you back on different show, right? Walk me through top movies that you're just like, how the heck did they get this right? Like, what are some of those movies out there? You're like, this is pretty dang close.
Man, I've been really rewatching the Matrix movie lately, and it's been there's like motivations and like, I remember watching it as a kid and like, man, this is just so. Now looking at it, those movies are so far ahead of their time. And I would highly recommend just going back and just rewatching them. The latest one, I don't like the latest one, but those first three, you would be surprised just how much stuff is going exactly what you said in the in VR, AR stuff. Like that is like people have kind of been sidetracked with the AI hype. I think lately, crypto came, then it was VR and metaverse, and now it's AI, and it's the combination of all of these technologies that kind of are shaping up to be what like the utopia that we, hopefully utopia instead of dystopia that we all hope for. But in the same sense, like I guess the Matrix motif is that, are we already in a simulation like that? It just points, it keeps pointing closer and closer to that. And so that's why those movies are so ahead of their time now, it feels.
Now I see people in the chat. They're like, what are these guys on? What are they up to?
Sorry.
Well, different. No, I love it. No. And we were going through there when we were chatting in person. And again, for another show, I'd love to continue the conversation. Look, there's a ton of people out there as they listen to this, Ryan, they'd love to chat with you. I'm sure they want to engage with you. Where can they find you?
I appreciate that, Albert. I have a Slack channel and I have a meetup here in Dallas. And here's where I think is an interesting. I've been really inspired lately by a lot of young builders. And interesting is that they have a much keener eye for looking for a lot of like use cases in a much clearer path sometimes. And that's what that's what's inspiring is now that I've like achieved this certain level of understanding complexity is that, now I just build complexity and it's sometimes not the best case. Okay. I have a website, Prompt Engineers AI. At the moment, it's feeling more just to keep it focused on the community. And I'm just trying to be sharing what I'm learning along the way. So I have a stream and I have a YouTube channel, and I'm also just kind of getting set up. I don't have a production level as you guys yet, but I aspire to be that way. But I have a Discord channel, and follow me on LinkedIn. Just feel free to reach out. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. We're humans. So like the connection we're going to have to build is we got to start, collaborating as humans and starting achieving as humans.
Yeah. I appreciate you, sir. It's so great having you on.
You guys.
You're a great human, and you're a family man as well. I appreciated that about you too. And thank you for, sacrificing that family time right now to be on the show. I've been on your website. And you just said it, I think for the moment, I'd say not for the moment. I think this is you. This is your authentic you, where you're a community guy. And God, we need way more of that in today's world. And so I appreciate that. You're just looking to learn and teach. I was going to bring this up here at the end. You mentioned how you're learning from some of the younger generation that's coming out, specific in the engineering world or software engineering world. And while you're learning a ton from them, I'd love to hear what advice, because we have plenty that are in the audience out there that, we're waiting to hear what you had to say. What's some of your advice out there for this up and coming generations that are in software engineering? How do they position themselves to have fun with this and to be on the positive end of all of this evolution?
It's a really great question. Find like-minded people and then iterate with those like-minded people, and just don't pay attention to noise, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and ask questions.
I love that.
Plain and simple. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Like-minded people, have some fun. I'm hearing jam sesh, like let's jam it out together. Let's work together. Let's iterate together. Let's experiment together and have your blinders on, because there's just a lot of noise out there. You're right. So I love that advice. I know, again, you're learning from those up and comers, but we got to pick your brain because you have a lot of wealth of knowledge to offer the audience, all of us. So thank you so much. All right, so that's it for today's AI Executive Podcast. Big thanks to Ryan Eglon for joining us and sharing his expertise. And just for those out there, a reminder to follow us on the AI Executive on Spotify, LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and all our other social media platforms. We also have a QR code on the thumbnail right next to Ryan's beautiful picture there. A QR code you can scan. That's going to send you to our newsletter, our chatbot that we're giving out for free. So if you're looking to lean in and you want a chatbot on your website with some great data, jump in, right? We're not charging anyone for that. We want to make sure that you get to experience white glove AI and the AI Executive at no cost. So please go on that QR code, scan it, and take advantage of it. And as I mentioned, we also have a major newsletter community. So if you're looking forward to more education and you want the latest and greatest, as I mentioned, and as I always promise, without the hype, please go and scan it. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing. We have way more to talk about. I'm going to have you on in the future. Please don't forget about us, little people. And we're looking forward to spending more time with you. Thank you again. And I appreciate you so much.
Hey, I appreciate you guys, you, Albert, Nick, and the team over at White Glove. I appreciate you guys putting on this, and I'm excited to work with you guys more in the future and develop the community here in Dallas and see where we can take this thing.
Well, don't forget all of Texas, right? We're down, us folk down here in the South.
That's true.
And H-Town, Houston, come on down.
all right, of Texas.
There we go. All of Texas. I love it. Well, thanks so much, Ryan. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. We're looking forward to having you on in the future too.
Hey, same here. Thank you guys for having me.
Have a good one.
Later, guys.